one point, they did solicit firsthand accounts from parents and so on. I'm the parent of a 16-year-old boy with autism, and I wrote about our experience. I am firmly in the acceptance camp. Acceptance is not surrender. I will say also, and I'm sure I will get flack from Michelle Dawson for saying this, but my son early on was in preschool, was in an ABA-based program. Now, what we did was we worked with the providers and the teaching staff and laid down clear objectives. We were interested in skill acquisition and indistinguishability from neurotypical peers was not anywhere on our agenda of outcomes. It was gaining him the kinds of skill acquisition that he was not getting from a typical preschool environment, and succeeded admirably. It's not what Michelle would call ABA, I don't think. It is, to some extent, what is marketed as such. In any case, my experience with Autism Speaks was I told them about our story, which by and large has been one of more successes than setbacks. We're certainly not out of the woods. I don't think any parent of a teenager is out of the woods in terms of security in knowing what that teenager's adult life is going to be. We suspect that Jeremy's trajectory is going to have a slower rise into the usual hallmarks of adulthood than many of his peers. But at some point, whether it's in his 20s or 30s, he is on his way to a bunch of things in his life, from work to how he sets up his home and lives, that I think will work for him and will be fulfilling for him. And none of this could have been predicted early on. We got the doom and gloom and tragedy and panic message. We looked at it carefully and said, we need to pick and choose carefully. We can't succumb to despair, and we can't fling ourselves at every last possibility. And so that kind of story was not what they were interested in at all. Now I'm also an adult on the spectrum. I'm an Asperger adult. I think that might factor into some aspects of this. It has been easier for me to learn my son's language, I think, than for many parents. I think there's something to learn from that, from looking at other parents who have figured out their children's languages, and to learn from that, you know, I think there are success stories out there. They're not being published, at least not by Autism Speaks. It doesn't fit the agenda. It doesn't fit the marketing model. And in effect, what I think is happening to autistic self-advocates is that they're being told, sit down and shut up, you're getting in the way of the marketing model. That's essentially the message that they hear from Autism Speaks. And I am at as much of a loss, I think, as Estée as to how to bridge that gap, how to get the two sides talking past each other to talk to each other.
Assuming that that's true, what do you think from a public policy point of view is the right way forward? So you're very frustrated. The medical model is the dominant way of understanding autism. Mm-hmm. Everybody, right or wrong, it's the dominant way of thinking about autism. How do you overcome that, you know, from the National Institute of Health down, you know, through the Canadian government and the U.S. government? It's really a really deeply philosophical difference from the account of autism that you're giving. So what can you do?
I think we have one scientist, Michelle Dawson, who is part of that research team with the University of Madison, Wisconsin, and the University of Montreal. And I think I would suggest that there are other autistic individuals, such as Amanda, who's here at MIT for the week, who could participate in on those research teams. And I think that there could be an infiltration of this philosophy and this way of looking at autism beyond just non-autistics deciding what autism is at the NIH or so forth. I don't know if somebody else has because this is a great panel you've got here too to make some suggestions. Phil or Amanda, do you have anything to add?
Well, she says. Well, no, I will keep this one short. I think what's happening is that that slowly researchers in the field are starting to understand that there are more dimensions to it than medical, that they need to go back and look at what the disability studies people have been looking at for the past decade or two, which is the social model of disability as opposed to the medical model, and that there is more interaction between those two aspects of disability than people have really comprehended so far. And I think Roz's team is one of the groups starting to do that, judging from the post-IMFAR comments I've heard. And the thing to do is to encourage that. It's a small group right now, I think, in the larger sphere of autism research, but I think working with the academics in the field is certainly one way to overcome it, which was, I think, your question.
Well, I think it's a vanishingly small group. True enough. But what about looking at this more as a civil rights issue than as a medical issue?
It definitely is. Actually, as a parent, my son is only 5, and taking a look at all of that literature in the disability rights movement was really shocking to me, just how much of it exists, and disability studies departments, and why is the world so unknowledgeable about these discussions, and how can we bring these discussions onto our teams?
Well, I think, the deaf community has been through all of this in many ways and has come to some accommodation with hearing people, but there still is that same sort of tension. And what the autistic community is struggling with seems very, very similar, but it seems like an interesting model to look to see what has worked and what hasn't worked. Mm-hmm. Because in essence, it's a public policy issue in terms of providing services and changing the way people think about human diversity, as you said.
Amanda's writing a response to me.